We are at the very top of this class. This is the third session in this new Kitchen Witchy Tarot Fundamentals session. This is week 3. We had a brief interruption because of the tumult in the world. Next week will be week 4. Then we'll take a little break and refill the well, as it were, and get started again. Leading up to now, we covered some tarot basics, basic information about structure, technique, history, the usual. And then last week we ran through a basic walkthrough of 3 of the sets of minor cards. We spent some time with the cups, with the wands, with the swords, ace through 10. Today we're going to do ace through 10 of the pentacles. This is, of course, a quick walkthrough. We could easily spend an entire class on each one of these cards, and perhaps in the future we will. But today I just want to lay the groundwork so that everyone has had a chance to lay their eyes upon each card and learn a little bit about it. Once we've walked through those 10 cards, we will jump to the people cards, which again, you could do an entire weekend or write an entire book on the people cards. But we are going to spend the time we can. Our second session today will be about exploring the animal symbolism in the tarot. So we will close our fundamentals and move into our special topic in the second hour. So again, during this time, I encourage you to divide your cards into stacks of major cards, pentacles, wands, swords, etc., because we're about to jump right in with yon pentacles. Today I'm going to refer to my own deck exclusively. If you have questions that would bring our attention to the Rider Waite deck, I do have that here as well, and we can refer to it. But for speed, we are going to do these. A quick introduction. Of course, I'm Madame Onça. I am the creator of the World Spirit Tarot, and I am your hostess for today's Tarot 1 fundamental session. I'm an entertainer. I'm an event producer. I'm a community organizer for the alternative spirituality folk living here in Richmond, Virginia. We've had a lot of social furor here and have made the news quite a bit in the last few weeks. So it is exciting to be here and alive during a time of change, although it does take a lot of spoons, as it were, to do all of the things. I love being able to bring people to this information because I feel like it's so empowering for us to have tools that we can pick up in our hand when we are quarantined in our homes during this time. And for the folks that have to go out into the world, it's nice to have a way to take care of yourself at the end of the day. I love teaching, and I'm deeply invested in getting this information to people, which is why my classes are pay what you can, watch them when you can. I do everything I can do to make the information accessible. If you have any feedback for me about how I can make them more accessible to folks, I'm totally open to hearing that. You can contact me through my snazzy website, theworldspirittarot.com or world.spirit.tarot@gmail.com, etc. Those are also my PayPals and my Venmos and all that sort of thing. So yeah, let's just jump right on in. So of course, all of the suits in the tarot have evolved over hundreds of years to be associated. While originally it was a game for a game's sake, it has evolved in such a way that each of the suits have come to represent one of the sort of Western cardinal magical elements, as it were. Tarot having 2 sets of cards that has majors and minors. The cards we're working with today are minor cards. Those minors are in 4 families, ace through 10. They are sometimes called the pip cards. And those cards, these minor arcana, as we call them, they really act somewhat as a day-to-day guide. They're like creative prompts for managing our day-to-day lives. The major arcana, which we will work on next week, are really more here to guide us on our big life lessons. Like, these are about the day-to-day plot twists. Those are about the narrative arc of the story of your life, as it were. Tarot is very keen on making symbolic correlation between everything. The direction people are looking in an image, the nature of the landscape, again, the elements, the animals, etc. And finding almost dream language ways to correlate those things to our experiences in our lives. Of course, the name of the suits vary enormously from deck to deck. If you are a connoisseur of tarot decks, you will have seen all kinds of things out there. And there are some very special interest tarot decks out there. But essentially, those elemental correspondences come down to swords equal air, equal intellect, equal decisions and communications. that is the suit of swords. The suit of cups, sometimes known as chalices, is a water, relationships, emotions. Wands are correspondent to willpower, fire, ambition, for some folks also their creativity, and pentacles, which we are working on today, uh, the earth itself, and not just the planet, but the notion of matter and everything that is incarnate in matter, energy contained in matter. And with that comes health, wealth, and the management of resources. So that's what we're doing today. I'm glad that we're working on this one today and not last week, when you may recall that my matter was rather worn down. So we did a quick tour through those other ones last time. Now we're going to do pentacles, also sometimes known as discs or coins or stones. So go ahead and grab those. If you have questions about anything, of course, feel free to pop it up in the chat bar if you like. Fantastic. Now, one thing to note, and we've touched on this in previous classes, is that if you find it is difficult for you to remember what the individual cards mean, to build an association, it helps, of course, if you spend time looking at the pictures and start to go, well, what does this look like to me? What does this image feel like? What does this image summon up in me emotion-wise? Developing an emotional response as well as an intellectual or memory response is a huge help. Even if it may mean you're like, oh God, no, not that card again. I bet you're going to remember what that card's about. So spending some time really getting acquainted with them as almost storytelling tools is very useful. But also for people that are numerically inclined, remembering that level of intensity from ace to 10. Aces are always that sort of beginning, the seed, and the story of the element as it unfolds in our experience is something that we can endeavor to touch on a little bit today. We start first, of course, with the ace. I have to say, I have no idea why and when and where in history ace became the thing that was the one. Oh, let me see. Karen said, before we get there, I pulled the Four of Pentacles. It looked very different from the weight deck. Oh yeah, we can, sure, absolutely. Let's take a moment. So yeah, you know what, let's just do a little a question answer session before I get to in my rhythm. So this is my Four of Pentacles. Although, and you will notice if you're looking in the Rider-Waite deck, there's typically a character sort of huddled around their material goods. I endeavored to bring that same mood to this character right here. There's sort of a sense of holding on to what is yours and being afraid to share and share around. But I wanted to make it clear that in my understanding of this deck, and this card rather, Pentacles are about the material realm, their health, wealth, management of resources. On some level, the Pentacles cards are always asking you, when they come up in your reading, how you experience your sense of security, whether that is from being fit, whether that is from having, you know, a healthy savings, whether that is from your, you know, your sort of sense of community. So in this card, I wanted to acknowledge what Pamela Coleman Smith had drawn and what A.E. Waite had requested to a certain extent, which was that that sense of like holding your resources tight. But I wanted in this illustration also to bring out the fact that while that person is holding their, maybe it's their financial resources, the metaphor in this image is clearly they're gathered around the well, filling up these big sort of amphorae with water. As this person is holding their resources tight, yes, they have theirs, but everyone around them still seems to have an abundance and also has an abundance of companionship. So the question I wanted to add to this is really like, where do you get your security? Is it entirely from things? Is it possible that you could enjoy a different kind of security by sharing and receiving and not just hoarding? Essentially. So I used the illustration, Karen, in order to insert a little comment, I feel, about how we might experience abundance and how we might experience privation, because the expression on the face of the person in the Rider-Waite version, to me, appears to be very much sort of fixated on fear of privation rather than the possibility of abundance in community. So I hope that's helpful. So any other questions before we jump back into the rhythm? Oh, you bet. I'm actually perfectly happy to just do like question and answer type stuff. That's really the world I come from, is the like, let's share and let's talk. So I don't know when in history ones became aces. I'm sure there's a specific moment linguistically, and it just hasn't washed up over my prow. I suppose I should find out, and perhaps one of you knows. But the ace stands for the one. It stands for it is the primo, it is the proto, it is almost before the one. It is the raw potential. So in this case, when the raw potential, the gateway into adventure of the suit of Pentacles comes up for you, it usually means the beginning of a new project. It may be breaking ground on a house. It may be building another human's body with your body. It may be starting a business. It may be starting an art project. It typically refers to something very practical, very hands-on, and very much you are there, find yourself standing in that gateway, that Vesica Pisces, ready to step through the gate into some sort of very practical, pragmatic, hands-on adventure that will require the sort of steadiness and discipline that the Pentacles speak of so well. So there's our ace. The ace stands for raw beginnings and potential. The Pentacle stands for in the realm of the practical. Again, sometimes it comes up around houses. Sometimes it'll come up for people around babies, and I try to address that without moralizing. I don't want to get somebody's hopes up. I don't want to give somebody the terrors, because you don't know where somebody is at with that. But there is this notion of something trying to be created with it. So be aware. Now this one is the thru of Pentacles, and this is my mother, who actually we are coming up this week on the 1-year anniversary of my mother's passing. So there she is in all of her multitasking glory. And this image you'll see is very similar to the Rider-Waite one. I just added the sort of element of night. I wanted to make her her footing a little bit more perilous, to call the emphasis to the fact that she's doing such a great job. This is the card of the single parent. This is the card of the thrifty entrepreneur. It is the short-term robbing Peter to pay Paul that comes from trying to sort of keep all of your resources moving while you get something built. So if the ace speaks to raw potential, this speaks to figuring out how you're going to accomplish it. Are you going to store those bricks one at a time until you have enough to build? Are you going to put it on credit? It's very much, what does they say? Maximum accomplishment with minimal resources. Totally like the starving artist card. Then we come to the 3 of Pentacles, and this is a little less starving. And again, this is very similar to the Rider-Waite in that case. That card, the art refers to masonry as the art. You know, the Pentacles are sort of built up in the arches. And that is incidentally the secret card of societies like Masonic and Rosicrucian type societies, from what I have been told. I'm not a member of those societies. This is very much the card of the artist who is making it happen. So you've gone from the raw potential to the getting your hands dirty, getting your feet wet, as it were, in uncertain times. And this is the world sitting up and taking notice of your capacity, be that as an artist, as a crafter, as a person in business, as a person with a movement studio. I mean, it could be anything, but it is very much about you getting your thing going and the world being ready to support it. It's a great card. Then we come to the aforementioned 4 of Pentacles. Again, this is really, the question is security. The 4s are always a matter of sort of a plateau in all of the cards. It's like a plateau with a twist of the suit. So the 4 is a plateau of, like, you made a lot of decisions and you had a lot of excitement and conflict, and now you are in a place where you can rest and recover for a minute. So that is the plateau with that element of strife sort of in it. This one, on the other hand, is very much that plateau of, like, you've got the resources. Are you going to share them? Are you going to hoard them? Are you going to invest them? Are you going to invest in your community, in your wellness, etc.? So there we see that plateau principle in action. And now we come to my old friend, the 5 of Pentacles. Again, this is very much in keeping with the Rider-Waite deck. Same tradition, slightly different angle. This is the card that came up for me continuously when I was a starving artist, when I was like dumpster diving and living in a yurt and all of those sort of moments in my life, getting the frostbite that I still have today because I was not smart enough to come in out of the cold, metaphorically speaking. This card describes what a lot of people are experiencing right now, a sense of insufficient resources, a sense that systems and the promise, the contract that was implicit in those systems is failing. There's a sense of people literally left out of the cold. And these illustrations are very deliberately ambiguous. Like, is it a cathedral? Is it a school? Is it is it a fancy house? Like, this person is presumably freezing right outside of all this warmth and opulence. And it's hard to tell in this image. Is the person on the other side of the door keeping them out? Do they just not know they're there? Are they on the edge of assistance? Did they just need to knock on the door? It very much leaves it open to some interpretation relevant to your situation. But there's this feeling in this card that things are not working. So the fives being conflict, once again, we see chaos, the chaos that comes up in a systems scrambling way. We see the chaos rise up, and then we see it there, the interruption of systems. Do you have a place to live? Do you have a place to sleep? Do you have a place to eat? Are you safe, etc.? All of those things come into question with that card, which is why the six becomes so welcome. Here we see the Six of Pentacles, again, very true to the old Rider-Waite-Smith family. This is very much a card of sixes are like a renewed level of stability. It is the plateau of the four with the added life experience of the five gives you some wisdom. So at this point, the question is, now that you may have bounced back, perhaps you have the resources to pay it forward. Perhaps you are the person mooching. Perhaps you are the person in a position to be a benefactor. So with power comes responsibility. Now, the Seven of Pentacles. I love this card. Sevens always speak to the vortex, as someone once said, my teacher. I think of them very much as cards of evaluation. Here we see a person in their garden. They have grown all of these sort of wild, triffity pentacle plants. And it's a process of evaluation, saying, is this what I intended to do? Do they need more mulch? Do they need more water? Do they need to be, torn down and composted and I start all over? When this card comes up, it asks you to engage in some deep think and evaluation of where your stuff is at. This brings us to the Eight of Pentacles. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to chime in. I'm going to welcome Nina. Come on in. Hi there. Make sure you turn your mic off. We're just walking through the Pentacles cards. And we had just gone through the Seven of Pentacles, which I'm going to show to you because it's very much a card well suited to a fairy type lady. We see the satyr in the garden with his goaty friend, and they are evaluating what they have grown and what they may yet harvest. Then we come to the Eight of Pentacles. Our eights are ultra stable. In this case, I feel that there's a strong element of what's the word I'm looking for? Intergenerational learning and sharing. The eights always suggest that like you've got it going on. You are in a new level of striving, and this card particularly to me speaks of again the multiple generations. There's the kid, there's the mentor, there's the apprentice. Like they're all here learning together how to do the thing. So for me, it's very much about you're stable. What can you do? What can you yet learn? Who can you mentor? See, this card definitely speaks to things going your way. Honestly, all the rest of the pentacles, the only pentacle that really causes any strife, is that five. When that one comes up and it suggests that systems are not working for you, all the rest of these are pretty benevolent. Here is our Nine of Pentacles. We see the lady sort of catnapping with her cat in her window. There's butterflies and flowers and the ocean and the great picket fence. The Nine of Pentacles suggests a well-earned rest. It suggests stability of resources, of health and wealth has been accomplished or can be hoped for. And this suggests that maybe it's time to enjoy some of what you have wrought. Let me see. me see. All right. So speaking of the Pentacles, I pulled the Seven of Pentacles twice this week. The second time I pulled a Seeker of Cups. Let's talk about that Seeker of Cups in a minute. He generally speaks to creativity and a certain amount of like being in love with the idea of things, but having a hard time of committing. So between that Seven of Pentacles and him, it suggests that there's a lot of raw potential and trying to figure out how to manifest them. So there was our 9. And that brings us to our 10. Here is that 10. We see the figure meditating in the garden. There's kids and animals, and there's sort of an abundance of flowers, and there's cantaloupe, and there's like a snazzy dock and a yacht in the background. This card definitely speaks to the concept of legacy. It suggests you, or the querent, of course, it suggests bringing together a sufficiency of resources, because again, pentacles are health and wealth, and spoons, as it were. It suggests having sufficient abundance that it really becomes about what you can do beyond the personal. It's not just like who's around you, but this card comes up a lot for legacy, like what you would sort of leave in the world, what you can do to enrich your environment and not just extract from your environment. A little bit of trivia, you can see in this situation, this person is wearing some high-waisted pants. They've got like a crown and a beard and a bunch of jewelry. Like, they are fabulous. In the original edition, he was wearing no pants, because I figured at the point in your life when you had a yacht and could sit around your yard in a crown, you probably don't have to wear pants. And I actually opted to put the pants on in the second edition. They look like bike shorts, I guess. Honestly, because some people are triggered by the sight of a naked man near children, which I have to say, having grown up in a sort of, a very casual environment when it came to that sort of thing, of all the things in the world that I could be triggered and concerned about, that was not one. And to me, he's just like a radical fairy living his best life on and of the earth, surrounded by family and tribe. But I really struggled with, like, as the artist, what I felt was right. Because I didn't want to change the art just because somebody was nervous. But make note of it, Confederates. Sometimes if the meaning of the art is entirely lost because of cultural damage, maybe you need to change the art and the culture. So I put some pants on the man, and I have to say he still looks happy. He's still having a good time in his yoga shorts or whatever. So when this card comes up, it speaks to being that person who your life is in such good shape that you can afford to be considerate of others and sit around with your cantaloupe and your crown and your beard and your kids and your boat. And it's all about being very comfortable in your life. So that is the speed vision of the Ace through 10. And Nina, I know you didn't get to catch the whole of that, but we'll get you caught up. In the interest of time, I suppose I have to talk faster. We are going to now run through the people cards. The people cards you're going to find 4 of those in each of your suits. So you want to get your four cups. For most of you, that's going to be a seer, seeker, Sybil, sage, but you may have like a king, queen, prince, princess, something like that. If you want to grab those cards for me at this time, that would be great. And we will do a walkthrough of those. While I am pulling those out, I want to say what I always say about these cards. In my opinion, the people cards are often the most challenging to read in the deck. So if you find that's true, it's not just you. If you don't find that's true, then I would like to know your magical elixir. I can recommend an excellent book to help you spend some time with the subject, which is this book, Understanding the Tarot Court by Mary K. Greer. And also by Tom Little. So this is a great book. It's really basically a giant workbook to help you get yourself well-grounded in the people cards. Boop. Da, 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 da. 1, 2, 3, 4. And again, you could easily spend, an entire weekend just working on these cards. But today we're going to spend, 20 minutes or so and see what we can do. Let's start with the wands. So when you are ready, get your wands in your hand. Again, you may have something like seer, seeker, Sybil, sage, or something like page, knight, queen, etc. We're going to spend a little bit of time with those. So you know these cards in another form from the regular modern playing deck as the king, queen, and the jack. The jack combines the sort of youthful questing qualities that the seer and the seeker have and just smush them into one sort of juvenile individual. They basically represent aspects of ourselves to be considered in a situation. Sometimes they may refer to an actual, literal other person. You go, oh, in this context, that's totally my aunt or whatever. And sometimes they refer to like an event or situation that is coming up for you. Yeah, they can be a little tricky. Historically, there used to be, and no longer is, blessedly, a thing about making a correlation between these cards and people's physical attributes. So you would go, oh, well, you're a mature male with red hair. I'm going to say you're the King of Wands. Oh, you are a motherly brown person. I'm going to say that you are the Queen of Pentacles. This very rapidly goes from being like a well-intentioned Victorian sort of fantasy device to being outrageously racist. So don't do it. It's an old thing. In conjunction with the word significator. So do not use these cards as people's significators based on their physical attributes. You may say, oh, you, sir, are so fabulous. You clearly are this woman here who's dripping with necklaces. Like, you can do that, but it shouldn't just be based on like superficial acts of birth. Let's say that. Because you never know. You don't know what somebody has going on the inside of them. So let us look at your seer or your princess and so forth. The page, princess, seer character is usually described as like a perceiver, learner. It is the sort of the early investigative aspects of personality. So in the context, for example, of wands, we find ourselves wands being fire, creativity, ambition, willpower, and you find yourself looking at someone who is excited and dynamic and willful and zesty and ready to learn a lot about the world. They're sort of revved up and ready to go. So when this card comes up, you know, you go, oh, it's the seer, the princess type character. She is perceiving and learning. That's why when I had to call the card something, I called her a seer. She's dynamic. She is receiving information, but it's not 100% about how she's taking action. Because for that sort of differently dynamic, we come to the seeker. Seekers are usually also called knights or princes or something, and they're usually a guy on a horse. Incidentally, this particular card, the Seeker of Wands, I am intending to do a re-release of my deck for 2021 because I realize it's going to be the 20th anniversary of the deck, and this is one of the cards that will be redone. So enjoy him while he lasts. Again, the Seeker is a guy on a horse. It's a teenager with a car. I may not have all of the information, but I am fired up with missionary zeal to get out and learn things the hard way. So if you take that sort of willingness to run at adventure and you combine that with fire, passion, and, you know, sort of ambition, you get a sense of what this personality type is like. Then we come to our Sibyl or our queen. This one is fairly traditional. By the way, we'll talk about it more in the next class, but in the Rider-Waite-Smith, there's also this cat, and it's a picture of an actual cat who hung around in her studio whose name was Snuffles. So while you're looking at this mystical queen of the desert, never forget, that's Snuffles the cat. The queens or the Sibyls are sort of the stewards. They're like big picture people who can see. They tend to be charismatic and driven and can see the big picture. And if you put that in conjunction again with that notion of like fire, drive, passion, ambition, this personality tends to be really warm and fuzzy with kids and animals, by the way. And then we come to the sage or the king. The kings are typically sitting on some kind of a throne, but in his case, I wanted to put him on a dromedary because his leadership, literally being the torch holder, like I have got the idea, I have got the ambition, the drive, the passion. He's clearly in motion. So this is very much about taking that big picture concept and being your own general and leading from the front. So there is that's a little bit about our wands, folks. Let's jump. If you have any questions, feel free to chime in at this time. We're going to jump to the cups next. Again, I want to recommend Mary Greer's book, Understanding the Tarot Court. And there's a little story about this. When I had this particular book, which I actually did the cover on, and I had forgotten I did the cover for, when I was in a deep, dark doldrums of who am I and what am I doing and so forth, I picked up her book when I was in the bathtub, and I sat down to read it and realized that my work is throughout this book, and I was referred to generously, which I was shocked and delighted, and and because I hold her in such high esteem, I was like, maybe my work really is good, and it totally helped me to sort of reboot my sense of self-worth, literally in a book that I have my name on the cover of, like my art on the cover of. So just goes to show. Okay, we're going to jump into the cups. I want to mention also that if you like that sort of thing and you're into Myers-Briggs, which is a sort of Jung-based personality test, it gives you a way to sort of break personalities down into conveniently 16 different types. And there's a whole world of understanding tarot card personalities, meaning these people or face cards, through the Myers-Briggs. So you can totally go down that hole if you are into it. Okay, so cups. We've got, starting here with our seer. Once again, we have the perceiver, the learner, someone who's open to information. They're sort of, because this is cups, of course, it's emotion, relationship, sort of the juicy heart space. So she is very much a person who is wide open, wide open energetically to the messages of the creative self. We see that turtle or fish is usually rising up in the corner of one of these as if to say, hey, I've got information for you from deep down in your heart. So this is a very tender, juicy card. It's also a picture of Pamela Coleman Smith herself, because I feel that she was one of those people who is really pure artistry and perception, not so much with the business sense. So this is a tender-hearted card. Then we come to the seeker. He came up earlier when Karen was asking. Handsome fella here. He's having a great time strolling along on his horse. He is on a quest to do with emotion, which can translate as, I love the idea of commitment, but in fact, I have terrible commitment issues. So he can be representative of someone who sort of blows into your life as a wonderful breath of fresh air or fresh water, as it were. A glorious good time with chivalry and high ideals, but they're not a person that you want to hang a lot of your like stability hats on, because they're fundamentally made of water and they will slip through your fingers without meaning any harm. So that is that quest. I'm on a quest for the Holy Grail. And wait, I think it's over there. Kind of a guy of any gender. Now we come to the Sybil of Cups, or the Queen, as it were, and she is love with detachment. Her sovereignty, her sense of like the big picture as a steward, she sees the lay of the land, she sees the lay of hearts, she sees how people are affected by dynamics. Her power is that she is not sucked into those dynamics. She is able to, being a mermaid, she just sort of flows with the current, so she can love you without being absorbed into your drama. That is her great gift. But, you know, she is a mermaid. She can only get so far out of the element of water. So her stewardship only extends in that area. And then we come to this personality, the King or Sage of Cups. I would like to mention about him, you know, my early understandings of him, or them really, because gender's irrelevant in the tarot. The card of the artist. The books used to say also the card of like the schizophrenic. Now, because there's a lot of like sort of shaming language around mental health, I I'm trying to find a way to acknowledge what it is about him that makes him neuroatypical and unique without having any kind of baggage. If you think about it on an image level, here's a person who has a throne made of water. They are a king. They need to lead, they need to control, they need to direct other people in the realm of water, where you literally can build nothing. In the realm of emotion, where you can tell somebody what they're supposed to do and feel, but you cannot make them feel it. You literally can lead the horse's heart to water, but you cannot make it think what you want it to think. So it's a little crazy making. So this card comes up for people who are very much trying to function in two worlds. Again, leadership, sort of top-down guidance, and also at the same time holding that sort of sloshy tenderness. So I think that reputation as being sort of schizophrenic can really just be a matter of, like, some of us struggle to be in this world and, the world of the artist, or the world of the business person and the world of the feeler. So he has a heavy load to bear, trying very much to I would almost say he suffers from the worst of what toxic masculine culture imposes. You have to be like this and you can't be like that. So I'm still feeling it out, but that's my feeling on there. Now we're going to jump to let's go over and visit our Pentacles. I feel like I'm missing somebody. Oh, Swords. Let's do our Pentacles, and then we're going to do the Swords, and then we'll check in over here because Jennifer has a good suggestion for us. She's always got some interesting suggestions. So Pentacles, of course, as we were just discussing, the realm of things and stuff. It is practical. When Pentacles come up, for example, I just did a significant relationship and household reading for us the other day, and there was a lot going on, and everything in it was Pentacles and Cups. Pentacles and Cups. That's like, it's all about your emotions, and it's all about how you are going to survive. If you're doing a relationship reading and nothing comes up but Swords, you have to ask what the relationship is predicated on, right? In this case, in this time, there's a lot of Pentacles going around for people, because the question for many of us is, how are we going to live? How long will the unemployment last? Is there a future? Does anything matter? So the Pentacles are very much up for us, and these Pentacles personalities may appear, therefore, in your reading. So here we see, once again, that perceiver, that learner, our seer. She is meditating deeply on the Pentacle. And you can see that she has been sitting so long and so studious that the vines have begun to grow around her. She's become immersed in her environment. The bees are flocking to her. The animals of the forest are investigating. This card comes up when the perceiver, learner, commits to deep study. This is the card of studious investigation and really giving yourself to some deep learning. So in whatever field that may be. Then we come to the Seeker. I have to say, I love this card. We see all of that sort of drive and feistiness of the Knight, and yet here it is in the Pentacles. So earthy. It's so earthy right now. This card is very much about doing the hard work. So this card makes me think of I'm not super well-versed in the astrological correspondences in tarot beyond what's intuitive, but he strikes me as very Taurian in that it's like you set this, I'm willing to work hard and learn personality on a course, and then you just step back and let them move mountains. With this personality can come a certain amount of obstinacy and a reluctance to adapt to new information once they get set on a path. That he takes that horse out of the driveway and he wants to just go in the direction that he meant. Then we come once again to our queen, our Sybil. And, there we see she is here in the guise of Chicamacoatl, who is the goddess of corn. And there's her snake, very much creature of the earth. This card speaks to, again, stewardship, nurturance, a harvest, abundance. She is literally, she is the money in the bank. She is, the spoons in your energetic drawer. And she is, the produce that is growing in your garden. So she is everything that is sort of nurturing and abundant. This card tends to come up around really great things. Again, all of these Pentacles cards, if they had a sort of shadow, it's just that they can be a little obstinate. They are not the personalities that are like, oh, quick, let's go pursue whimsy and adopt 3 poodles. These personalities tend to be more more dug in and set on their ways. So here we find ourselves now with our king, or our sage of pentacles. It's funny to realize from here the letters are backwards, and the piggy. I felt that this stereotypically that this image should be of sort of like the big fat jolly king, sort of a plump bacchanalian figure, and I wanted to resist the stereotyping, so he is not that guy, but I did want that feeling of like being abundant and sated, so the little piggy is doing the duty for him with his happy belly full of apples. This card, again, maximum comfort, maximum abundance, leadership and guidance in the area of stewardship. So this may be a person who's got great advice for you when it comes to how to manage your resources, how to manage your wellness, how to lean into the comfort aspect of life, and not just the workaholic aspect of life. So that is that guy. And then we wanted to, what was the other one? Swords, I reckon. It's so funny, I pulled out all the other ones and not that one. I must have pulled them out because they're not right there. Come to me. Oh, here they are. Find your swords. And then we'll check in on Jennifer's suggestion there. So find your seer, find your seeker, find your sibyl, and find your sage. Here we go. We see our seer. This particular card, I like her. She has some mythic correspondence with Zephyr, the wind. And with that, she's got some baggage around. At her best, she is that perceiver, that learner, that brave adventurer who is excited about learning the power of words, communication, boundaries. She is smart as a whip, just, still gaining life experience. And with that is the part where sometimes you say things because they're clever, or even because they're true, and they will bite you or someone right in the ass. So she is definitely that person who, she's not trying to be a mean girl, but she might accidentally be a mean girl. Just like, oh, I didn't know that would hurt you. I'm sorry. Because swords people, these personalities are fueled primarily on intellect. They may not be 100% tuned in to what the emotional animal needs. Okay, and then we come to our ambitious, action-minded, quick thinker, mercurial temper, that seeker that night. Once again, he's been sitting in the driveway, revving the gas on this horse, ready to take his ideas out into the world and find out, if what he knows, if what he thinks he knows is true, is actually true. So this is a great card if you're, trying to get fired up about getting your ideas out into the world. But in the long run, you'll want to back it up with some stability. And then we come to the Sibyl. I can say this card comes up very often for people, particularly women in my circle. This is the card of hackers, people who are so good at the big picture. They can see how the whole system works. It's the person who watches your choreography 3 times and then mostly knows it. It is the person who's like, oh, I'm enjoying your festival, but I'm also seeing all the systems that are making this happen right now, and I'm making notes. It is very much a sort of brainy person that can lead to a little bit of a conservative nature in some ways. This also comes up for spectrum-y people who are really good at seeing the big picture, but they're not good at like social cues. They might miss some of that stuff because they're not great with the human animal. And this card traditionally was known as the barren woman. If it came up, it was like, oh, you are surely a woman who will have the horrific spinster fate of never having children. Because again, they had this like bullshit notion that if you were a woman who was smart, then you also must be like frigid and unlovable. So this is where you can see that the legacy of the cards has to shift to reflect the times. It does come up a lot for women in leadership who people are like, why are they so harsh and bitchy? Whereas if they were men and said and did the same things, they would not be perceived that way. Like the gender bias shows up very clearly because here she is with her big picture doing the good work. And here he is essentially doing the same thing, right? Here's the king in the same role. He's up on high. He can see the whole world from there. He's got his sword of truth. He's got the big picture. He's speaking with authority. He speaks honestly and asserts clear boundaries, and yet somehow he does not have quite that same stigma because we are acculturated to expect, that kind of like straight talk from dudes. So he does come up a lot around being, again, the sort of spectrum-y engineer type. So that takes us quickly through all of those personalities. Jennifer was going to mention something about a trick that she uses with the court cards that may offer some additional leverage in terms of understanding what they have to offer. Do you want to pop yourself up on the screen?
Yeah.
Or just talk?
I can talk. Can
There
everyone see and hear?
Okay.
All right, cool. So when I look at those cards, the court cards especially, it helps for me to see what direction they're facing.
Oh, yes.
So a couple of, I'll go through this very quickly. Kings face the issues they're looking at, but they're very frequently ignoring what's behind them. So for example, like when you see the Sage of Cups, whatever card might be behind that to me is usually telling me what this like super feelsy person or situation is looking at.
Yep.
Sages are very full of external power and they have full agency. So if they want something to happen in a spread, they have the like power to direct other people to do it, or they can do it. Queens have more internal power and they have about 90% agency is how I've heard of it.
Mm-hmm.
And again, like a sage or in your thing, and I just
sages and sibyls, it's fine.
Queen. Yeah, your sibyls. It's not necessarily like biologically men or biologically women.
Right.
Yeah. It's usually a person with the truth. For sibyls, but the word truth always comes up over and over again and again. Like you kind of see what they're looking at or what they might not be looking at.
Sure.
Sometimes for queens, I get the impression like if something's behind them, they're just like, I'm not going to be like that. That's not what I need to deal with right now.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like,
Absolutely.
Where kings ignore the problem and pretend it's not there, queens like go, I acknowledge that problem, but that's not the first bite of the elephant I have to take.
Right. Yeah, no, I love that.
Yeah, your knights are bridges that convey something by taking something into the direction they're facing, and they're messengers.
Yeah.
They're very dynamic and fast moving, with the exception of the Knight of Pentacles. If you usually like in the traditional cards, that's the one horse that's walking, and all the other horses are running around crazy.
Even here, he's sort of plodding. It's like the most Percheron sort of.
Yeah. And then
that's actually why it's why in the next edition of this, I'm actually redoing the Seeker of Wands, because it's just it's like, this is them when they're overheated. They've already expended their energy. Everything about this is sort of lethargic. Yeah. And my experience of that personality is much more like beginning of a hot day.
Yeah. And then the seers are or the pages are exactly what you said. They're students, but they don't have a tremendous amount of agency, and sometimes their perspective can be a little bit naive.
Sure. Oh yeah. Yeah. I think that's very astute. It's very much about, and I don't want to make them sound like they have no gravitas. Cause I mean, some people live their whole lives in that personality, and
they do.
That's fine. But it's, but yeah, it's a matter of like, whether you're having a very internal life or whether you're, out trying to lead,
Yeah. And it's also dependent on what's going around those cards and what's leading into them, but that sometimes is kind of a base I'll think with when I'm looking at the cards, and of course it can change. Like something will jump out at me because I'm an intuitive reader, and the card will go, no, that's not what I'm saying.
Sure.
This is what I'm saying.
Right.
Yeah.
And
but
thank you very much.
That might be a tool for people's toolboxes.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. And that, which actually brings up something really sort of more broadly useful for anybody learning to read, is that I can impart to you, what is part of this sort of intellectual heritage, you know, what is listed in the books. I can impart to you, you know, what I have learned over a certain number of years of working with the cards and looking at the cards, but none of those things outranks your own intuition. If you're like, whoa, it's so weird how all the horizon lines line up and it's like he's just looking right past her and right off the page. If that visual speaks to your situation, it is fully valid as part of your interpretation. So this notion of like where and how you know, the people cards are looking, for example, is totally, that's totally useful. In fact, I was thinking about that because in the process of making the art, I have drawn the image that I'm using and I am carving it. But the reality is when it prints, it's going to be facing the other way. And now I have this, am confronted with this issue about whether I'm going to, like, the original print will always face this way, but do I correct it for the deck so that the horse is going that way? Or do I, you know, it's sort of a matter of interpretation, whether he needs to be charging left or right.
Speaking of which, your deck, when I look at the Knight of Cups, and then I look at like the Five of Cups. Yeah. You know, the characters in the back, in the foreground, crying over all the cups that have spilled, and then in the background is the Knight's horse, because they fell off
because they just they're not super grounded.
Or they either fell off. They either fell off, or that Knight was really flaky, and maybe you should have just had a one-night stand with them. And then
absolutely, and to add one more note to you know, your notion about the sort of directionality in my deck. Technically, he's going one way, but like really, he and the horse are both sort of looking up, because the challenge with reality is that they're so not about the real world. You know, you're so like, but you know, like, you're great and everything, and it's been really great, but I'm still looking at that perfect thing, right?
And then there's the guy's horse right up there.
Yep. Thank you. That's a nice bit of poignancy. Well, that brings us to a full hour of me talking, actually. So if anybody has any questions, I'm open for them, and then we're going to take a quick break while I run to the bathroom and get ready to talk about animal symbolism.